Hello and welcome into an emergency edition of the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here late on the evening of Saturday, September 13th. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And you know that it's an important episode because I just dropped the Govey as we open this. Jori, the Toronto Blue Jays have recalled Trey Yesavage they're set to recall Trey Yesavage, according to reports from Sportsnet's Shai Davidi and Ben Nicholson-Smith. Their top prospect, their 2024 first-round pick. Just a massive rise for him this season. How are we feeling about Trey Yesavage joining the Toronto Blue Jays for their run to October?
Yeah, holy helium, man. Trey Yesavage set to make his Blue Jay debut. One would figure in the week ahead against the Tampa Bay Rays. What an incredible season for him. Really no other way to put it. This is a guy that started the year in Dunedin. And I think that we had said that the best case scenario for Yesavage this year, he gets to double A and you're happy, and then triple A is icing on the cake. This is whatever comes after that. Never mind a cherry on top. This is like the sprinkles. This is incredible from Yesavage. Just amazing stuff. One of the best pitching prospects in baseball. One of the best prospects in the Blue Jays system, full stop, if not the very best. And an extremely exciting week to come for the Blue Jays. However, questions now on exactly where Trey Yesavage fits into the equation.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the corresponding moves. And before we kind of get into, I think, like bigger picture of where he fits in, I think like almost even worth like taking a step back further and being like, holy crap, this guy was drafted a year ago, right? It's been just a little bit over a calendar year since he heard his name called in the MLB draft.
And
And
at that, he didn't even pitch last year
yeah,
for
exactly.
huge portions because of all the injuries, the collapsed lung and stuff like that. Like this is a meteoric upon meteoric rise.
Yeah, and so for a guy to, not only come into the organization and succeed the way that he has, pitching at all four full season affiliates, he starts in Dunedin, gets 4 games in Vancouver, gets the stint in Double A, and all of a sudden he's at Triple A. And I think if you were to kind of rank the players on the Blue Jays, in the Blue Jays organization that we've talked about on this podcast the most this season, Trey Savage is probably right near the top because, the number of conversations we've had about whether he even has a chance to get to this point. And obviously now he does. So they're going to bring him up. And it sounds like he'll be with the team in Toronto tomorrow. And if he's not activated then he will be joining the team officially for their trip to Tampa Bay and then get activated on Monday and get to go to George Steinbrenner, the spring
He'll be
training
right at home.
facility.
He'll be right at home.
He'll be right
Uh,
back there in
yeah,
Florida.
he's
So
the he's the just going off of baseball reference here. He is the sixth first round pick to debut this year. Nick Kurtz, Cam Smith, Chase Burns, Christian Moore, Jack Caglione previously, and then of course now you've got Yesavage joining the mix. Just the second starter, and I mean Chase Burns obviously. The circumstances are a little different there. So for Savage to make this kind of leap to get to this point, just incredible. Like you see
yeah.
me, I'm struggling to come up with the adequate words for what this means for him, for what this means for the Blue Jays. Like this is a legit huge, huge part potentially of not only the Jays' future, but potentially their playoff run. And wow,
Yes.
also were we wrong on that Savage meter.
I mean, what did I mean, obviously we record yesterday and we kind of, you tempered, I think you were down to 10
I
and
was
I
out. I
dropped
was
to
out on it. I
30.
think I said 10%. I said
Yeah,
it's not happening.
yeah.
And Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro said, "Ha, that's funny." Click.
They said we're just gonna do this just to spite Jory because we want to see Trey Savage. But it's really interesting. I mean, like just great numbers. Obviously, he's sixth in the minor league in strikeouts. He has 160 and 98 innings. I believe it was the highest qualified strikeout rate in the minor leagues. A 3.12 ERA across the four levels. And I think we talked about it yesterday a little bit, right? Like he had to not only adapt at every level, but like travel, move, and like, moving is a stressful thing. And moving, from your apartment in Dunedin to your apartment in Vancouver to your apartment in Manchester to an apartment in Buffalo. And like, it's, there's a tax that goes along with that. And now you're moving to your apartment in Toronto, I guess. It's just really incredible the way that he's been able to handle all of that. And I know the concern around his first outings at each level have been there, right? Like every single level that he's gone up to, the first outing or the first couple outings have been a little bit shaky. And, that started all the way back in the spring breakout game where we get our first look at Trey Savage. And the first inning is rough. He kind of walks a bunch of people and then he bounces back. And then, same thing happened at Dunedin. I think it was like 6 walks in his first game there. And then same thing at all the stops. So, I mean, is that going to happen in the majors? I mean, maybe it's certainly there's precedent set for it, but I mean, when you look at like the ceiling that this guy provides, like to me, I think when you are going to talk about like where he fits on this roster, right? And I don't want to like send Ryan Barucki down to the minors right now if that's not necessarily going to be the thing that happens. But to me, I think you look at Eric Lauer pitched really well in the seventh inning today. And, for that's kind of later in the game, a little bit higher leverage. So if you think that Lauer can kind of handle that role as like a later game lefty and you slide him into the Barucki role, and then, you're kind of looking at that long man-ish role being available, then you probably like Trey Savage for that better than Ryan Barucki.
Is there a universe that Chris Bassett's back is acting up on him and it's a move in correspondence with that?
I mean the scenario that I laid out is probably like I don't want to say preferable because that, Ryan Barucki, cool that he's back and all that stuff, and it's a good story. But, it's preferable that that's probably your storyline and the way that you get him onto the roster rather than Scherzer's thumb is an issue or Bassett's back is an issue or anything along those lines, right? Like I don't think that you're hoping for Trey Savage to come up and have Lauer bumping back into the rotation. I don't think that is it's certainly possible within the realm of possibility. Injuries happen to pitchers all the time, and it's not like Bassett didn't have the thing kind of flare up on him. And Scherzer, even today, I think it was just a cut on his thumb, but I think that there's certainly a chance that it could be some kind of injury for sure.
Yeah, and that's obviously not the ideal scenario, like you said, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's the ability to dip into that pool and have a guy ready to go, ready to make his big league debut. I mean, Savage obviously had some bumpy starts to start in AAA, but his last outing he was incredible.
Perfect
And I
through
think
three.
that's kind of what you're dreaming on. That's kind of the tantalizing stuff right there.
So 2 weeks left, 14 games left on the schedule. I think it actually gives him like a pretty nice runway, right? So obviously they got the Rays, the Royals, the Red Sox, and then the Rays again. Obviously that includes the Orioles ending that series. Um, but it does give him a runway to not necessarily like have a shaky outing, but it gives him some chances to like get his feet wet, and you kind of, get the chance to see what he is at the major league level right now, and then make a decision about him before deciding on his ultimate postseason fate, right? And we've discussed this as well, where he is eligible to pitch for the postseason or pitch in the postseason if they so choose to have him on their playoff roster. They just have to get an exemption from the commissioner, and those have been gifted out very freely. I don't think that they've even been declined in the past, 10 years or however many that the rule's been in there. So, certainly it's going to be an audition period for him the next couple weeks to be a factor in October.
The thing I think as well is going to be super interesting is his stuff is supposed to play up out of the pen, but I really wonder how it's ultimately going to fare against big league guys, right? There's all this talk about all his stuff kind of moves the same way. So, like, this is going to be a real test here. Like, this is, he's been tested. He's
Yeah.
passed to varying degrees with flying colors, but nothing is going to test him like this.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting. I was just working my shift on the web desk at Sportsnet, and I was writing the news or whatever. Was listening to an appearance that John Schneider had on Blair and Barker a couple weeks ago, and talking about Savage, and he's like, "Well, it's the minor leagues, it's not the big leagues, right? So we need to be certain that he's going to be one of our top 14 pitchers to make that move. And I'm glad that you brought up the stuff because I mean, I did want to get into like what makes him so special and what makes him so good, right? Like this is a guy, 6'4" right-hander. He's throwing from a higher release point than I believe anybody in baseball right now, and it's like he'll step in and be day one a look that hitters haven't seen before, and with all of his stuff moving, in such a unique direction, like it's just a unique delivery, a unique set of pitches, and a really tough like at bat, right? Even Riley Terada was on Jays Talk Plus recently, and he was saying, it's you just don't see stuff move like his. So, that's where the ceiling I think comes from is that, guys are not going to be familiar. They're not going to have a frame of reference. And obviously you can move or you can use the traject systems and everything like that. But, let's say that you're playing the Red Sox next week, right? And the Red Sox are coming into Rogers Center. Like how many guys on the Red Sox are going to have like significant time spent in the lab, in the traject machine, facing a Trey Savage type. Like you probably
No,
take a couple at bats, right? Because it's a reliever. You're not even guaranteed to face him. So
it's gonna be a guy that has basically not been seen since I don't even know who else really he compares to, right? It's like even in
Nick
recent,
Pivetta was a comp that I had heard, but it's like it's still so different than that.
yeah, like it's just a very unique kind of outlook for him. And that's kind of where the upside lies, right? Obviously, his stuff is really good. The splitter is dynamite,
The
splitter
splitter
changeup,
is,
whatever it
yeah.
is. When Jay's loving splitter ball, what else is new? But no, like this is going to be a really fascinating couple weeks for the Jays here. You've got Savage now. They pulled that lever, which I'm really surprised they did, and they're probably going to pull the Santander lever in a couple. Like this is going to be a bit of a different ball club heading into the last week of the season, isn't it?
It's kind of funny, like when you think about it, obviously, you think of like all these guys who have had major contributions this year. And, now it's kind of rounding into this form where it's like, well, we're going to be coming at you with like everything we got, not just like, our merry vibes and like guys with an 80 WRC plus coming up with a big hit. Like we're going to be coming at you with like all stars and first round picks and guys who you've never seen anything like before. It's ultimately like pretty cool that they are making that decision. One thing I mentioned this as well. Like, I mean, with Savage, his outings in the minors have basically been decided by how much he's in the strike zone. If he's in the strike zone, he's been really good. If he isn't, then, again, it's a really simple concept. But, when he's in the zone attacking, like he's just a much different pitcher than he is when he is not throwing strikes, right? Because I think,
Yeah,
you look
and
at the
there's multiple
splitter.
guys like that. Like if he's able to attack just the Jays have had success with guys like that. Like obviously bad comp in a lot of ways, but Brendan Little's the same way. Where if he's able to attack guys and make them scared of him actually throwing strikes, then he has success. So not to say Savage is the same pitcher by any stretch, different makeup, different obviously handedness, different arsenals, but the Jays have had success with guys that are at their best when they're attacking because that is how most guys are able to succeed.
Yeah, so he's obviously got like the high riding fastball that works really well at the top of the zone, right? The secondary is like splitter, slider, cutter, kind of depends on the classifications. I guess the Statcast stuff has been fastball, split, slider recently, so that's kind of I guess what it'll be at the major league level. But I mean, when looking at his splitter and slider in AAA so far. The splitter is holding hitters to a .42 average, a .042 average, and with a 57.5% whiff rate. And the slider is holding hitters to a 176 average with a 47.2% whiff
That
rate.
is two legit pitches. That is two
And that's
nifty,
beyond the
nasty
fastball.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's gnarly stuff. That's like Kevin Gosman, but like even better.
Well, again, it's AAA, so it's a little different, but yeah, it's like it's legit. Like the reason why we're recording a podcast right now is because this is a legit prospect, the top prospect in the organization. Depends on who you ask, I suppose. But I think if we're at this point right now, we can say he's the top prospect in the
Yeah, I think you
organization.
can safely say that the Jays are calling up their number one prospect.
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody, no disrespect to Arjun Amala, no disrespect to JoJo Parker. This is the guy. This guy's got the juice.
Jojo Parker at the field today.
Yeah, he made his
Exciting to see that.
speaking of young guys
Yeah.
making their face known.
So one thing I also want to point out that, in as we kind of mentioned, this conversation of where he fits into the pitching order and everything like that is in the minor leagues, he has had reverse splits so far. So lefties are hitting 131 against him, 235 OBP, and a 220 slug. And that is like he's faced a pretty good amount of lefties this year. So, that's pretty good
It's an
there. And
okay
then
sample.
righties are hitting 185, 260, 353 against him. So a little bit more slug, but still like the on base and the average are
Yeah,
great.
he's eating him up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah, I mean, you wonder if that is part of the equation as far as the confidence, the ability to go out and send down a Ryan Baraki or whoever they ultimately choose to move on from, right?
Yeah.
I'm a little fascinated, someone that's gonna maybe get caught up in the shuffle here because of this move. Mason Fluharty.
Yeah.
Does he make any noise at the big league level at this point, or does he seem like he's maybe a 2026 guy?
Well, I wonder if you think, right, like if you're thinking about your postseason, he's probably an option, right? But I would guess that this move kind of does, remove kind of any shot for him this year if there's no other openings or injuries or anything like that. I would imagine he pitched tonight and he had one of like the nastiest K struts that I've ever seen. He strikes this dude out on a sweeper and it looks like he's walking straight to the dugout and there was zero outs when he struck him out. Like it's just like he was gone. I'm like, dude, it was crazy. But I
It's
would
like that one's
imagine.
worth more than that's worth more than one out, guys. Like, see you later.
Yeah, he's like, that was gross. I'm out of here. See you guys. Um, yeah, I would imagine. I think you would probably have like the specific need arise for him to come back up. Um, unless you're not confident about Lauer kind of sliding back in the bullpen, then maybe you're bringing him up for Brecky, and it's something that we're not exactly thinking about. I'm not exactly sure what the machinations may be for Fluharty, but I would imagine that he is going to be like you said, a 2026 type option.
Yeah, and then because we've kind of flirted around the Lauer stuff as well, but his outing, do we want to touch on that a little bit? Because this also plays a factor in it. Like, it seems like, assuming that Savage gets the call because they feel like they've got enough lefties to make it work, deep in ball games. Lauer's outing today, where he basically keeps the Jays in it en route to ultimately being able to make that incredible comeback. Like, that's also, I think, worth acknowledging.
I mean, are you comfortable with him kind of sliding into that like second lefty later in
If he's
games
going to pitch
role?
like this 100%, I don't see why not.
Yeah, so I mean today it was an inning and two-thirds. He does give up a run, but it was, a walk, came around to score. He got two strikeouts. I thought the location looked a lot better, right? Like the last couple times he'd been over the heart of the plate, and this time he was like pretty firmly around the edges. And as we've talked about, like that's kind of the difference maker for him, right? And I think for him doing this too, where he bounces back after like another 11-day layoff between appearances. I
We
think
talked
you
about
feel
it,
pretty
right?
good.
It's
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's
like the lack of continuity or consistency, maybe is the better word to use there, that he's kind of dealt with. And he spoke about that with Shai Davidi, and we spoke about it last episode, where if he's going to be effective, he's going to kind of have to figure out how to space himself out, how to keep himself ready. But if he's found something here, if they've found a role for him, all of a sudden it becomes a non-issue.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that's kind of ultimately the route they do take. I think the one thing that's nice, like say that you go with our proposed Barucki down, Lauer into a deeper role, and you Savage kind of into the Lauer role. If you kind of go with that machination, a nice thing is that like say that you Savage, struggles, whatever, is that like Lauer still is there and like kind of has the ability to go multiple innings, right? So you kind of have like two guys that can do that right now, and as you kind of, test the waters with you Savage, at least Lauer is still there, and you're not, firmly putting him in like the Brendan Little role of like we need to save you for certain situations, and you need to be like our lefty in the highest leverage spots against the best lefties. you still have like some flexibility with Lauer to kind of move him around and let him do kind of what he did today with multiple innings and stuff like that.
Exactly, exactly that, right? I think you've basically put it exactly what it's going to be, right?
So one more thing, I guess, before we can kind of end for today is so they'll select Yesavage, right? And we just saw obviously the DFA of Aurelvis Martinez. So somebody will have to be DFA'd for Yesavage, and again, probably Baraki because he's out of options. So would figure that that's kind of the way that they go with that,
Is
right?
is there any way, could it even be anybody else? I don't really know because you've got to clear the spot on the 26th. It's not like the Manoa one
Unless
where
they're
you're just doing
really
a 40.
unless they're really mad about Braden Fisher giving up a home run today.
Could you imagine?
Like as far as when you look at like who has options and stuff, I have it up here. Like I don't think that there's another, unless it is an IL stint, another way that like completely makes sense because the relievers that have options right now are Varland, Fisher, and Little. And again, don't really think that any of those three are
None
going
of
anywhere
those
at
three
this
are
point. And
probably
then you're also going
on
to
the
have to
chopping block.
DFA somebody when Santander comes back too, which will be another interesting decision. Or I guess if Santander comes back.
Is
Um,
Salak Manoa in trouble?
I actually thought about that. I was thinking about that the other day that like they could have just DFA'd him when he was um able to return, but he had like he had that really good outing the other night where he struck out 8 over 5, and I think you probably have like committed so much to him that you wouldn't pull, you don't want to pull that.
It's
You
a
don't want
little
to pull
tight to
shoot
pull
on
the
that one
it's a
right
little
now.
tight to pull the trigger on that one.
I think just looking at some of the guys that are like on the 40 right now, making this move to me, like Justin Brule, is kind of in that conversation. Easton Lucas, obviously, like there's a little bit more length with Lucas, but that's probably more in the realm of where you would go with a DFA at this point.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think the cool thing is, troops are on their way,
Yeah, 100%. Ben
they're making their
Nicholson
way.
Smith, Ben Nicholson Smith also made a good point that it like hurts their flexibility for this offseason because it takes up another 40-man spot. Um, but hey,
The real priority.
I mean, come on, like you're gonna not promote Trey Savage now because you're worried about losing Brandon Valenzuela to the Rule 5 draft.
Oh yeah, that's got to be it. You know what they say? Uh, Pennants are only temporary. 40-man roster spots fly forever.
They go quick for having 40 of them. Like it's tough to not, kind of fall into a little bit of crunch. So, um, before we end for the day, I mean, you got any other Trey Savage thoughts? I think we talked about the season that he's had, the way that he's been able to go. I guess one thing we didn't touch on is like that they've given him some run out of the bullpen too. So he's, flexible in those roles. He even in his start, I believe it was 34 pitches, so he hasn't thrown more than 50 in his last couple times out. Three of his last seven have come out of the bullpen, two in AAA, one in AA. So he's certainly, used to coming in from the bullpen, as he's done that a couple times. I think I guess one thing that we can kind of end with, I mean, for you, just your thoughts on like the overall timing of this. Like why now and why not say after another start or something like that?
Yeah, if I had the answer to that, I'd probably be working in the Blue Jays front office. I couldn't tell you exactly why. I think I sent it immediately in the group chat. I was like, I mean, sure, I guess. And if you feel like he's one of your best options moving forward, and he showed you what he did the other day, and you're like, we've got the means, and he's ready, and we may as well. Then to me, yeah, like don't leave him down there. Don't leave him to overcook. If he's ready to go and he's going to help you be a legitimate World Series contender, then 100% that's a guy that you want on your major league roster come October 1st.
Yeah, we will absolutely be dialed in for Trey Savage's first outing, whether it's well, I guess it's probably going to be in relief, very unlikely to be a start. But no, it'll be really cool. First time you see him get up in the bullpen, and the first time you see him run in. Too bad it's on the road. I feel like and a little entrance for him at Rogers Center would be pretty sweet. But the way that it lines up right now, if it is going to happen At home, it'll be against the Red Sox the first time. So that'll be
Listen,
a big spot.
if his debut has to come on the road, at least his playoff debut likely at this point, especially with the Tigers losing again, looking more and more
Yeah.
like it'll be at home.
I know when I texted you like emergency pod and you were like, sure, I guess, like about the comeback win, I was assuming isn't where you were like, yeah, I guess we can do that. But before you had heard the Savage news. But no, really big win for them today too. I mean, like just so cool. Like the comeback, like I texted you, it's like you watch the games, you just feel like they're gonna win
Oh yeah,
because
the
they
ninth inning
fight, they
rolled
battle.
around, and it was like, you know what? Like you could feel that this was not a game they were losing. This one, you knew it was a win. You knew they were going to win this.
Yeah, they man, what a team.
They call them the cardiac Blue Jays, I guess. Need
Yeah,
a need a need a need a need a better alliteration than that.
the bounce,
The
no.
bounce back Blue Jays, the Benever Basay Badai Blue Jays.
All right.
I think that's our sign.
Before
That's
we
our
get too
sign.
far down that road, that is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View podcast. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at J Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the Trey Yesavage debut.